is 6 o'clock, so we will call to order the regularly scheduled board meeting of the San Marcos School of CISD School Board. We have 6 members present. Ms. Cantu will not be joining us this evening. If you would please stand for the pledges.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to you, Texas, one state, one union.
All right, we have opportunity for public forum, but we had no speakers sign up for this evening, so we can skip right to the superintendent's report. Mr. Fernandez. Sorry.
Good evening, Board of Trustees, Superintendent Cardona. I'd like to welcome up a member of the Masonic Lodge. We're very fortunate to receive donations every single year, so this is their annual donation to our elementary campuses.
Good evening. My name is John Sizemore. I'm the current master or president of San Marcos Masonic Lodge number 342, Ancient Free and Accepted Masons, right here in San Marcos, Texas, just a stone's throw from the front door down on 123. If you've ever seen the 60-foot flagpole out there, that's us. It is an honor to be here this evening, and I would like to extend my thanks to Andrew for inviting and coordinating this for me, as well as to Mr. Michael Cardona and the board for your time this evening. Texas Masonry has long been supportive of public education in schools. One of our honored members, Marabou B. Lamar, as many of you will likely know, is referred to as the fatherhood of the father of public education in Texas. Due to his efforts in establishing land grants for public education. We like to continue that support of public education through various scholarships here locally to the high school seniors, and also donation of American and Texas flags that have been flown over their respective capitals to each of the elementary schools in continuation of that support. Our benevolent fraternity has long venerated those that dedicate their lives to education and to those various pursuits that tend to polish and adorn the minds of those that will turn out to give us the type of citizenry that make this country and this state great. So this evening is my pleasure to present one of each to each of the elementary schools. I won't go through the trouble of finding everybody to pass them out. They'll be there along the back. But my thanks to you this evening for this opportunity. Thank you all.
I think they ran. They're coming anyway. Yes, yes, they want.
Thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Boy.
Is who here's from Travis? You're only going to get one because we already did yours at the thank you for having us.
Where did you drag it?
Veterans Day presentation. That's where you got, but you'll get your Texas flag today. I promise.
Oh my God.
All right, we're going in order.
Take a group photo?
Yes.
That would be great.
Back up.
In the back.
We can join. We can join in the back, but not in the front.
In the back, but not in the back.
All right, ready? Yep. 1, 2, 3. There we go.
Thank you very much. So much.
Man, COVID wave.
All right, Mr. President, members of the board, we'll just continue on. So last month, Trustee Halsey and several others wanted to report out on where we're at with coronavirus, but then there was some other things that I was self-reflecting on, so it turned into an hour report. So just sit back and enjoy the reflections of the superintendent from the past 3 weeks. First, we want to thank Mr. Javier Montenegro, who works with Signify Lighting North America Corporation, for the donation that y'all will give. We'll bring him up, but we didn't bring him up this meeting, but we wanted to personally name him. That is our parent who donated LED lighting. I know that's a big passion for some of us as we try to become more efficient with our lighting and energy savings that come from there. A little bit about the COVID-19 update. It changes every day, so I would just say to the community to be flexible, take precautions, make sure that you wash your hands daily. We say for the children, the ABC songs or Happy Birthday is a good 20-second hand washing. We have been in constant communication, so Mr. Wozniak is working with our nurse here at the high school and with us also, cabinet members, principals, with the city, with the county of one right now. I think the county literally has one person dealing with this right now. And we're coordinating with Texas State School Safety Center. There's some documentation on the dais that is kind of the district's take from another district of our response and things we put in place. Also, TEA on Friday finally came out with their first letter, so that's attached as part of your documentation. But we do have a process and a plan. We are meeting. We discussed the school annex last Thursday, so in the event something does happen, we will have our own crisis center where we will all coordinate, which is Mendez, room 137. That seems to be where everybody goes to coordinate certain things, and it's out back there. And we're learning every day something new. At this point, you know, it's the flu on steroids. Again, the biggest takeaway, and what I won't go through every single bulleted point, but the biggest takeaway was encouraging our kids, if they are sick, to go through the nurse. Any nurse, that includes adults in the building, because sometimes what happens, particularly at the high school campus or secondary campus, is a young man or young lady will go to the restroom and text their parent, and then the parent will come up to the office to check their child out from the office, and the nurse may not ever see that kid. And so we really want to encourage students to go through the nurse to make sure that the nurse, because we have to report any flu-like symptoms, any infectious disease. We have the protocol, the nurses have a protocol that they report to the city and to the county, so we can kind of track that and see if we have an issue. And so we really want to make sure that we take care of the safety of our kids and our staff members by going through the nurse. All of this will be on our website. We do have a website link. I don't know if it'll allow me. I'll probably mess it up, so I apologize if this messes it up. That we have active right now that has some information, the letter that we sent out, but there is right there a link to everything, and if you keep scrolling down, you'll see all the other links that we have live, just giving advice. Mr. Fernandez is stepping up his communication during this time, so we would also ask indulgence to help us with parents as maybe we over communicate some things for the next few weeks and next few months. We are meeting weekly. Mr. Wozniak comes in and meets with us in cabinet so that we can discuss next steps, and then he can tell us what he's hearing from the city and the county. I won't go over all these, but it's really be healthy, report to key officials, mainly the nurses on our campus, and then we have the protocols in place that we provided for you that we will follow, much like we do if we have a chemical spill or a trespasser. You know, there's things that the protocols that require us to act in certain manner to make sure that we take care of our students. From cabinet and from the different departments, we are amping up our clean. Now we do clean daily, but deep cleaning over spring break, we are in the process of purchasing these misters you hear us talk about. So these spray misters are something we started last year. It really started as a result of a study at Bonham about why kids were getting sick or why they were being absent. And so this spray mister electrolyzes water particles. And so they can go into a room and spray, and the mist attaches and kills and stays for like 48 hours to kill any viruses. And so you can literally just walk into this room and spray it, and then we're done. And so we have 4 misters right now, and we're purchasing 10 more, so every campus has a mister. And it literally is the newest technology that we can get. Maintenance, we do clean our air filter systems quarterly, and they're also looking at how they can assist. Transportations use the misters to spray the buses, to clean the buses on a daily basis, and they may move to, you know, maybe a morning and an evening cleaning after they transport. Nursing, again, is encourage our parents for students to report to the nurse. And then also we are adjusting our cleaning schedule for the clinics to twice a day, a morning and evening. And then teaching and learning, we do, Dr. Rees Mills and the instructional personnel put together 2 weeks of online lesson planning. Should that happen, we would have access. Now we would have to work with parents who don't have internet access, but you know, I think we can accomplish that with some of our Wi-Fi's hotspots that we have to make sure that if we have to go longer than 2 weeks, they can work, but at least we have 2 weeks stored up, and then we'll activate those should the need arise. Again, recommendations: wash your hands often, avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth, avoid close contact with people who are sick, stay home when you're sick, cover your mouth and nose. I think this is a teaching lesson that our teachers have to work with our kids to cover up, and then we'll adjust our cleaning and disinfecting. And then at this point, we don't have anybody going to any countries designated as level 3, but we do have the link for cdc.gov on the San Marcos website that gives you, I mean, it's China, Japan, South Korea, Iran, and Italy, northern Italy, I think are the areas. We do ask if any of our parents are going to travel for spring break out of country that maybe they reconsider that, but seeing as how that's not an option for some, just to let us know, or let their campuses and campus principals know and the nurses know. And that was really it for the corona. I mean, Mr. Wozniak's here. If there's any other questions, I think we jumped ahead of the game, and so I think we're staying a little bit ahead. Attendance will speak about what we've seen in the last couple weeks. It hasn't really, today was bad because of the rain, we think, not really because of anything else. It was just a rainy day. But any questions, maybe something we're missing that we need to message?
Ms. Halsey?
Thank you so much. I think this is really helpful. And my only question is about, are we having any shortages in getting supplies like sanitizers and such? Are we still able to access all of the supplies that we need? And the second part of that question is, I know oftentimes we ask parents to bring in hand sanitizer into the classrooms, and instead are we as the district providing the hand sanitizer?
Yes, we have provided every campus the big cleaning solutions, and then we are not in short supply currently.
Right. Thank you.
I have one question, Mr. Cardona, as to maintenance staffing with the increased cleaning frequency. Is that something you were able to handle by reallocating current staff, or do you have to bring on temporary people, or how is that going?
No, I think we can cover it with the staff we have without adding hours. Just kind of adjusting some of the things we do or timelines, correct? Yeah, it's just the timeline. And then we're off next week, so they'll get a good deep scrub cleaning because many of them work next week anyway.
Okay. Anything else?
A second part of this, of my superintendent, remember it's an hour, so we're only about 10 minutes in. No, I'm just joking. It's you gotta, you need humor about right now because it's a stressful time. But during the board meeting last month, somebody made a comment about, I don't know who it was, could have been me, I just thought I heard a comment about communication, attendance. We were kind of having just a general robust conversation about a lot of stuff. And it just so happened that last week, I got an email from one of the companies that we use to message. If you remember, unfortunately, we had an incident last year involving some poor choices that led us to kind of mandate what communication teachers should be using to communicate with parents. So School Status is our main platform. Remind is another platform that's district authorized. Mr. Fernandez uses a Blackboard messaging system to communicate all the great stuff we're doing and some other things. But School Status really is the platform that we use because it provides a transcript of the conversations, the text, the emails, everything in English and Spanish. And so it really winds up being a protection for everybody. But they reached out to us last week, and after the board meeting, the data that they shared with me kind of like shocked me because I didn't really even know the amount of communication taking place. And so I want to say that because sometimes we hear from the loud crowd, which may not be actually what is taking place. And this, again, is just School Status. This does not have anything to do with Mr. Fernandez's Blackboard system. So when I show you the data, so on the far left is 19,332 total phone calls. This is in a 1-year period, 365 days. So imagine that you can see the spike by month, and you see obviously summer, there's nothing because we're on break, and then you see January, but you see December, there's a lot of communication, and you see it spiking all the way through February 20th. So the blue line is text messaging, purple is emails, and green are phone calls. 9,065 emails. So this is predominantly done by our teaching staff, our administrators, and some central office. I would venture to guess special education staff who communicate with parents in a variety of manners. The text messaging is what got my attention. 228,296 text messages between parents and teachers discussing whatever they're discussing over the course of a year. So then I asked the question, well, when are they discussing? So they provided me this nice little chart. And you can see that Sunday through Saturday, every day of the week, we have teachers and administrators communicating with parents on a variety of issues. And obviously Monday through Friday would be the days that were the most populated. But you can see starting at 3 p.m. to 9 p.m., we are having communication with families. And so I say that to say that, sometimes myself as a superintendent, I hear from only one source, and then I always tell the principals I'm like an old Polaroid picture. Once you take the image, it's hard to read. I'm not digital, and I am guilty of sometimes maybe presupposing things are happening that are not in fact true. And I thought going into the break, I think we should highlight the fact that this is our teachers and our administrators communicating in a variety of manners with our parents and our students. And this is all trackable information. So if we wanted to drill down, they are pulling it by campus, by administrator. Is it just 3 teachers doing all this? Or is it 250 teachers by campus? So we have a conference call scheduled for tomorrow, and they're going to help us drill down more about who and what we're communicating. But I think it's good, it's positive. And then how again, going into, you know, conversations we had last month. And I know sometimes high school personnel will feel like I really pick on them a lot. So I'm not here to pick on them. It's, you know, I was a middle school and high school principal. And so that's what I'm most comfortable discussing, the things that I know. But a comment was made last month, and so I wanted to go look at the high school. And so Mrs. Hernsberger, where's Ms. Hernsberger? Over here. She actually pulled this data together. I said, hey, Ms. Hernsberger, can you go back to 15, 16 years and let's look at our campuses and see how we've been performing? So she did. So all the red lines are a school in San Marcos CISD. On the left, vertically is percent EcoDis. On the right, going across the bottom, is 2003 through last year. So tax, the blue line is when we move from an easier test, tax, to STAR, which remember STAR put more special education students, more ELL students testing. And this is the data she pulled. This is every school in the state of Texas. So in the background, you see the light yellow is your more affluent schools, I would venture to say, the more affluent schools. The darker red on the bottom are the schools with higher poverty and how they've done. And in the middle on the red lines are all of our schools and how we have done from 2003. And I'm just going to focus in on the high school because that seems to always be the topic of conversation. And you can see that in 2003, about 49% of the campus was passing all STAR tested or tax tested areas. So if you remember in 2003, it was junior level classes. That's when they took the test as juniors. And the campus was roughly about 50%, 49%, 50% EcoDis. So I would say yes, in 2003, we had some issues. But you can see the trend line for the high school has gone up, and then it dipped when we started STAR, because anytime you start a new testing system, it gets difficult. So then we broke it down by economically disadvantaged. And so they're about 69% of all tests, so this is all tests. And we could probably drill down by every single thing, but this, to me, is all tests, and they're about 68% EcoDis now. So I would say that they did dip after we moved from tax to STAR. So you can see 2016, they've started inching back up from 64 in 2016 to 69% in 2017. Now this does not take into account the gaps we see with obviously TSI, certification tests. This is just your STAR tested area. But it does show that, in my opinion, and for what it's worth, with a population of students that's significantly greater economically disadvantaged, they are at least trying to move in the right direction. Now, I'll be more than happy, we can break this down by all campuses and we can email you, but it's like 98 slides. I don't think y'all want 98, a PDF of 98, like all the data. But I think it's something that, you know, as a superintendent, I need to be very mindful of when I say certain things. And, you know, I've come onto the campus and I think sometimes they'll look at me like, oh God, what's he looking at? Well, I look at a lot of stuff, but sometimes I forget that in the long term, it's a marathon. So those kids in 2018, 19, if we were to go back and look at all the data for the individual elementary campuses, going back to when they were in second, third, fourth, fifth grade, we could track where there were gaps or where there, like if that elementary campuses were, let me go back, you can see there are campuses that are trending backwards from 2003 to 2018. And so if you're in 2006 and you're trending downward for 5 straight years, that's going to reflect 10 years down the road when they move into high school. And so that's why when we talk about fixing the system, we are trying to address down to the, even Bonham uses the protocols we use for effective feedback in their PLC work. They have aligned the work, the conversations they're having with their teachers so that it starts funneling up. But I did think, hey, you know, San Marcos High School should be, we still have a lot of work to do, and we're moving in the right direction, but over the course of 16 years, I think they're holding their own, and you could see by the data in the state, they're in the middle. And they're above schools that are far, you know, that were more red. And so I think we should look at that data. Like I said, I'll get it to you. It's a big PDF document, but I'll send that to you tomorrow morning. But it did make me go, every board meeting we have, I go back and reflect on the system. And are we moving the system? And so I think we are moving the system. It sometimes doesn't show. And like I said, they're working on AP tutoring, SAT tutoring, Princeton review. I mean, financial planning with parents. We're trying to address the entire system. And so that's my superintendent's report. Any questions about anything in particular? Like I said, I'll get y'all every campus. I'm sure y'all want to see every campus.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mr. President, that concludes my.
Let's see, that takes us into reports and information items. 6A, academic update.
Good evening. As requested at our January board meeting, we are going to give you some information regarding our credit recovery and attendance update. It is one presentation, and the credit recovery will segue into the attendance update, and then at the end there will be an opportunity to ask questions.
Good evening, members of the board and
Financial planner. Well, there we go, 2 for 1.
does everything. How many Aggies?
All right.
Is that scary that I didn't know how to do that? So, members of the board, Superintendent Cardona, members of cabinet, my name is Tanisha Presley. I'm the principal of San Marcos High School. The purpose of this presentation, or my portion of the presentation, is to provide clarity and in hopes to answer questions that were posed in our January board meeting. My goal is to really just simplify the data. What you'll see this afternoon or this evening is a aggregation of about 20 to 25 different reports, and we've narrowed it down to 10 numbers that will hopefully provide clarity and answer your questions. There we go. In the fall of 2019, 1,377 students lost credit in one or more classes at San Marcos High School. 809 of those students lost credit due to academic performance, and 661 of the students lost credit due to attendance. There are 432 students who overlap in number. At San Marcos High School, there are 6 different ways to recover credit. Either credit recovery, attendance recovery, Phoenix Academy, Button Academy, Summer School, or summer credit recovery. In credit recovery from January to date, there are 236 students who regained credit. Remember that those who are eligible for credit recovery are had a grade point average of 60 to 69. 347 students regained
credit lost due to attendance by attending our attendance recovery. And a true summary of the numbers are represented in this slide. Again, 236 regained academic credit, 347 regained attendance credit, and 74 enrolled in an alternative program. This is important because you may be looking at some of the numbers and think, well, they don't really add up. On that slide that had the 3 circles where I talked about the overlap, there's a plus or minus different margin of error of 97. That number comes from remember when we're talking about earning and losing credits, there's an ebb and flow to what credits are earned and what credits are lost. When we pull the report in January, and then we pull the report again a few weeks back for this presentation, there were 97 students who showed up in January that don't show up now. Some of the kids are represented in the number 74. They moved to an alternative program. Some have unenrolled and gone on to other schools or school districts. And so that margin of error is there, which means out of the 1,377, we have approximately 720 that we need to identify for summer school or summer credit recovery. There's also a possibility that this number will shift and go down a little bit more because we have some students who will year-long average from the fall semester and the spring semester. So if you include the plus or minus 97, we have approximately 623 students that we will identify for summer school and summer credit recovery. My goal on campus is the big question is, well, what are we doing to help kids who are struggling, right? And so we have ample number of ways to regain credit when credits are lost. And this is our reactionary programs that we have on campus. Credit recovery, Phoenix Academy, Button Academy, the list goes on. I want us to move our mindset or shift our thinking from being reactive to a more proactive approach. So if you recall back in August when I spoke with you about our plan, some of the things that we are doing is to focus, we want to turn our focus to Tier 1 instruction. So the first thing we did is looked at our instructional materials and we've made sure that those are up to date. We've made purchases in social studies, science, and we're currently in the English Language Arts 2021 textbook adoption process. TEKS resources, this is a curriculum that the district purchased a few years back, and we've quadrupled our logins to TEKS resources and just making sure that our teachers are really focused on what it is that the state is requiring our students to learn in the classroom. And our teachers are able to do this through planning. We've also implemented our lesson plans, which started in January. It took the full semester for us to build that idea amongst our teachers. We started in January. We have daily PLCs for our core tested areas, and that's another proactive step we're taking to make sure that we are teaching our kids exactly what it is that the state requires us to teach. We also have talked about our focus on Tier 1 instruction. From October 16th to date, we have had over 900 instructional rounds and walkthroughs on our campus, and this is our way of increasing our awareness and accountability on campus for what it is that we're supposed to be doing in the classroom. And then another thing that we've done here recently in the last month is we've started the conversation on campus about our grading guidelines and making sure that if students are not passing our classes, that we are doing everything that our grading guidelines say that we need to do. So I do appreciate that Superintendent Cardona made mention of the communication with parents as part of our grading guidelines. That's something that we're working on our campus, is making sure that we're staying in contact and really building that partnership with our parents. Coming soon, we're working with E3 Alliance to develop an instructional playbook for our campus. And what that means is similar to what you'd see at a football or soccer. You have this playbook, and there are non-negotiable instructional strategies that we want to see on our campus. Again, our students, our failure rate often is when you look at that 800 number of students who lost credit due to academic performance, we have to then make sure that our instruction, that we're teaching in a way that students learn. And then we are also moving to the gym night model for instructional coaches. It's the gym night coaching cycle. We are proposing diagnostics for math and reading for our current 8th graders, and this is still in conversation. What we're finding is that we have students who need support with reading and math, and we want to make sure that we have that when they come to our campus or before they come to our campus. So by the time they get to San Marcos High School, they're sitting in classes where they can get the support they need to get to be academically successful. And then we're also proposing a revision. Again, this is still in conversation, revising the criteria for eligibility waivers, Phoenix Academy, Button Academy entry, and for summer school. And our sweet babies have somewhat learned that to game the system a little bit. And so we want to make sure that definitely need those support systems in place, but we want to make sure that, you know, we're not just creating a system where a kid can just sit back and say, don't worry, they'll put me in Phoenix or they'll put me in Button my senior year, so I don't have to do it right now. So we want our students to have the same sense of urgency for learning that the adults in the building have for teaching.
Good evening, Board and Superintendent Cardona. My name is Christina Woody. I'm the Attendance and Liaison. Sorry, I feel like Principal Presley's a little taller than me. District Attendance and Liaison Coordinator. I'm going to start with our 3-year attendance data. So as you can see in the column farthest to the right, this is our year to date. Everything that's in green is trending up, which is exciting. Rodriguez was left off of here. I'm sorry, it's because they don't have any comparable data, but their data is 94.8 for the year, and their data is included in the average at the bottom. So as a district, we are moving up. And I think a lot of that is in part with just the things that we're already doing on campuses, which have to do with those incentives, right? The relationships we're building with kids, all the great instructional things that Principal Presley discussed. These interventions and benchmarks are just kind of embedded into what we're already practicing as an extra layer of support. So as a district, when our students reach 3 unexcused absences, we mail that 3-day letter to students' parents and guardians. We also start monitoring them closely, so they go into a database and we're monitoring every absence they have. We're making calls. When a student reaches 5 unexcused absences, we mail a 5-day letter to students, which this is new this year. We embedded this extra letter. We also reach out to parents to have a conference. And at this conference, there's an admin, a counselor, a teacher, a parent liaison, and we ask the parents to come up and we really just look at what's going on and talk to the family, right? So what are the barriers that are keeping kids from school? And it's really different depending on the conversation that we're having with the kid, right? It can be transportation. It can be just habits. It can be that maybe I have an issue with my schedule and I don't want to go to this one class. So we're really looking at how we create interventions to address those specific barriers. We complete a school attendance agreement where we say, hey, this is the issue, so this is what we're going to do to support you. And your agreement is to bring your kid to school. And if not, we develop a plan with a nurse or whatever it is. We start conducting home visits. A lot of times these meetings even happen at our homes. If parents can't attend, we'll bring and go out there and do our meetings there. And we just continue to monitor. So we're writing down what we're doing. We're looking at if it's working. We're continuing to be flexible and adjust our plans, assign mentors, do whatever we can. Once we reach 10, we mail that 10-day letter to the students. Of course, at the same time, we're reaching out every absence. We continue to address those barriers to school attendance. So again, being flexible with our plans. What we find a lot is something that can be really a barrier to kids attending one week can change the next. So we're flexible in that. At this point, we're really looking to offer opportunities to make up their work in those attendance hours. Kind of, if we're secondary, those credit recovery options that Principal Presley addressed. And even in the elementary schools and our primary, we're looking at those academic gaps because we know that attendance gaps create academic gaps. So we're addressing those through tutorials, or whatever that looks like on each campus. Yes, and then at this point is the point that we're really looking to see, okay, are these interventions working? Are we moving kids forward? Is there growth in their attendance? And if we feel like there's growth and we're moving, then we continue doing what we're doing. We might adjust the plan. And this is a time where we say, okay, is this something where we do need to refer the parent to court? Here's our 5-year dropout data. This is captured at the last Friday of September. So this is changing, but this is what is submitted from PEAMS for the year. We're at 92. Some of the preventions that we take is throughout the year as kids, withdraw, whether it's for their moving districts, we have a sheet that's monitoring those kids, and we're making sure that we're following up with those kids if they're supposed to move to a different district, so that they're enrolling in those campuses or that they're doing homeschool and we're getting the proper documentation that we need. And that really happens throughout the whole year. At the beginning of the year, we got a whole team of staff. We did community walks. We went to every single house of kids that were unregistered with us. We knocked on their doors. We talked to them. We captured a lot of students back that way. Sometimes it happened that the address we had was a mobile home that was no longer there. At that point, we're really reaching out to our parent liaisons because they're amazing. They are amazing. Love them. And they have connections to family members. They know things that we might not know, so we use them as a resource to try to get in contact with the families. Throughout the year, when we have students who are at high risk for dropping out, really around attendance, we have 2 truancy case managers that have 50 to 60 secondary students, and they're working with them and their families. They provide transportation, they provide resources, and just really being like an advocate for that student at the school level as well to get them to school daily. There's an MTSS facilitator at the high school who also works with Tier 3 at-risk students. We have alternate option meetings. So sometimes we find that, hey, these are all the things we offer as a district and this isn't working, but this is what San Marcos offers, right? And this is what we can give and take you, and we build partnerships in that sense. Principal Presley let us have an additional Phoenix classroom this year, which has been really great for a lot of our kids who are chronically absent. We found that a lot of them just had those gaps and they needed to catch up. And so when they were put in Phoenix, there's about, I think, 11 to 15 of them, and we're seeing great strides, and they're gaining those credits. So we're super excited about that. We've also put in since December, so when kids miss 10 consecutive days of school, they're withdrawn for attendance. So we want to make sure that we're capturing and we're staying up to date with those kids. So when they are withdrawn, we are putting in a court referral so that we can follow up with them and maybe come up with alternate solutions with the community as well. So something that we're looking into that's very exciting for us, especially when you sit and you get to know these kids and you're in their homes and you're hearing about their stories. A lot of our students, they're working during the day, or they have pressure to take care of their brothers and sisters, and family's really important. We love that. So sometimes even Phoenix doesn't work for them just because of the lack of flexibility, but sometimes they need a teacher in the afternoon when they're off of work or whatever that looks like. So we've been looking at some additional flexible school options, which would be an online option where students can actually do their work at home, and there would be teachers available for tutorials later in the day so that they could get those needs met. And there's students that just come to mind that I know that we could recapture in that sense. So that's something we're looking into that we'll bring more information to you soon about. And that's it.
Sans?
Could you just briefly remind us the difference between excused and unexcused absences?
Yes, so excused absences would be so the first 4 that we've implemented a policy this year, which I talked briefly about last time. The first 4, if a student is sick, if they have the flu or a cough, a parent can write a letter and we can take it, or they can have a doctor's note. If a student has a pattern of having those letters from their parents and we don't have doctor notes for documentation, after 4 we do ask them to go to the doctor. If they can't access the doctor, then at that point they can come to our school nurse and we can excuse it for them. So it's just saying this is an excuse for a reason medically, or if they're at a funeral, or there's multiple things that categorized as an excused absence. Unexcused, they're either we're not getting any documentation, we're not getting a phone call, there's no reason for the absence.
Ms. Custia?
I'm going to address this to the superintendent. Mr. Superintendent, I'm looking at the dropout data. In between the 16-17 and 17-18, seems like the dropout was lower than. I realize that we've been growing in numbers and not as much here at the high school campus, but you know, those are lower numbers than over here, and it seems like in between. Oh, you have it over there. You have 15, 16, and then 19 and 20, and it's almost a correlation there, somewhat less, 92 over here and 110 over there. So, do we have any, some idea as to why the numbers were lower at that point in time? Did we have a lower population here? Were less kids being maybe coming to school, I mean, as far as not being sick, or, I'm just trying to grasp that.
I can speak to that a little bit,
Okay,
because I
thank
really
you.
have looked at it and
Okay.
the data and segregated. And what I notice is that if you look at the pattern of dropouts, I mean, this is like in the state of Texas everywhere, you usually see it higher for 2 years, and then it might drop for a little bit, and then it goes higher, and it has to do with cohorts. So the majority of the students that are dropping out are those repeating freshmen that sit there for 3 to 4 years, so a lot of them are aging out. So it can depend on that cohort. So this cohort had a lot of freshmen that were sitting at that level. So, you see patterns in like that everywhere. Even if we looked at it from 20 years, I'm sure we would see the same.
So like to echo, so the cohort from 2016-17 was also the cohort when they were 8th graders that got good night on the PEG list for social studies scores. That group of kids, and then they were the social studies, the high school that dipped in data. So does that make sense? Like it's just a group of kids that.
Yeah.
Well, that takes me back to, I know that I made this comment before, as far as when you mentioned repeaters again, as far as the dropping out as when they were 9th graders and whatever. And I think it takes me to the fact that, you know, they're not, grade-wise, they're dropping out because of the fact that maybe they're not doing the grades that they should, they're not passing, and I know it gets frustrating. I know I would be frustrated if I was a student, and I would drop out too. So once again, I'm focusing on is what are we doing academically to help these kids so that hopefully maybe they don't drop out further on into, I mean, you know, when kids drop out, having talked to kids before in the past, in my profession of what I did, I always heard this almost the same thing, is that why should I stay? I can't pass anything, so I'm gonna drop out. So I think we need to focus on that, and hopefully maybe that will be a focus to maybe give them resources, provide some additional resources. I was gonna ask you about, on the tutoring, you know, you have some preventive reaction when you list them down here as being a pro-action, tutorials on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and you'll have a late bus. Well, how many students do we have here that really stay and go to tutorials during that period of time? Can we make a... Just, you know, maybe Cecily can give me some idea. Ms. Moore, I'm sorry.
Our Tuesday, Thursday tutorials are growing. We started out with about approximately 20-ish students attending, and we've reached 50 or more every Tuesday or Thursday. I think they love the snacks, but that's okay too, whatever it takes to get them here. And we are actually looking at using 3 more teachers in English, science, and in math, because teachers are wanting to separate the kids that are there just for help with their homework or help with assignments, and then those that are there to get support on EOC. We're seeing that we could maybe divide the group and get a little bit more structured.
And I like
support.
that. I
Yes.
think it's important that you separate the disciplines, at least for me.
Yes,
You know,
ma'am.
for the ones that are, some teachers are not well in, as well as they are in math or in English as they are in another one.
Yes,
you know,
ma'am,
so
but we're over 50 now every Tuesday, Thursday.
Thank you.
Ms. Halsey?
Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate the detail in this, and I think, of course, it's critically important that we focus on this at the high school level, but I also think that by high school, it's, you know, these are habits, right? So these are habits that have been formed in either the student, families, whatever, and I think oftentimes I go to the end of the year award ceremonies at the elementary and middle school, and there will be a number of kids who will get a perfect attendance award, but no star, they haven't passed their star scores, right? And so that always strikes me. And if that happens at the elementary school and at the middle school, then when that kid gets to high school, they're really frustrated, right? They're making the effort to be in the classroom and they're not succeeding. So I wonder if we could get a similar reflection and look back from the elementaries and middle school, Mr. Superintendent, after the spring break, so we could see sort of what they're doing proactively to prevent kids from, having half the students not getting our attendance and grades, and the other one getting the grades, even though presumably they're in the classrooms. Thank you.
Mr. Redondo.
Thank you, President McLaughlin. This is now the second time that the board has been presented with this information, and quite frankly, it's very concerning, to say the least. The first time I saw it, I left the meeting frustrated, angry, more than anything at myself, reflecting what have I done in the last 5 years that the data is so bad that we haven't improved it. And then I started thinking about how easy it could be for campus leadership and ISD leadership to blame previous administrations, previous school boards, but more than anything, I want to thank the current campus leadership at San Marcos High School for just identifying the challenges and identifying potential solutions. How unfortunate is it that the school board finally starts asking data-specific questions about San Marcos High School the moment we hire a highly qualified, inspirational, and powerful woman of color who essentially now has to take ownership of what I firmly believe is reflective of decades of a lack of leadership in the ISD, both elected and otherwise. And more than anything, I just want to echo and make it clear that whatever the campus needs moving forward, that as an individual trustee I will be supportive of, because for far too long I remember sitting in the gallery when this school board would cancel its meetings in December, when we would take data presented by former district leaders at face value without asking these questions. And for the first time, I think ever, this school board asked, we want to know how many students are passing and failing, who are receiving credit, who are not. And it was at that point, after reflecting, it didn't make the data any better, don't get me wrong, but it's the first time I think this school board has even asked to see it. And I think that's why we have as many challenges as we do. So again, just thank you all for your leadership and your willingness to identify these problems that I think have been chronic and have gone unaddressed for so long, and your willingness to identify solutions. So thank you.
Good evening. My name is Nicole Dre. I'm the Executive Director for Innovative and Special Programs. And I don't have a presentation, but school board members, before you, you have what started as a one-pager is now a three-pager. A complex set of information and data around our pre-K program. Just to give you a quick overview, and for the members of the audience as well, we began full-day pre-K in our district in 2013-14. Our first cohort of full-day students took the third grade STAR in 2018. The purpose of pre-kindergarten, according to TEA in the state of Texas, is to provide an intervention. It's basically in order to address educational opportunity gaps. And so our approach in doing that is to actually approach it as an enrichment opportunity to provide our students with opportunities to close some gaps that they would otherwise bring with them into kindergarten. All right. In 2018, 2019, we have new leadership, and I'll get into that in just a moment. If you'll take a look at the first page, I've listed the eligibility requirements. So in Texas, pre-K is free It's mandated by TEA to be free to any student who meets these eligibility requirements. It includes language learners, ECO-DIS, homeless, members or children of members of the armed forces, children of police officers or other service personnel, children in child protective services, and so on. I broke out the number of students that have attended our full-day program beginning in 2013. I'd like to point out that our economically disadvantaged percentages have been consistently just around 99% up until this school year. We have our largest number of tuition students this year at 34. We began taking tuition students in 2016-2017. We started with 4 students at that time. Okay, if you look at the second page, you'll see our first cohort of full-day students taking 3rd grade STAR in 2018. I'd like to draw your attention to the meets category. The first set of data is the students that did not attend pre-K. There were 384 students that year taking STAR. There were 258 students who attended full-day pre-K and finished out the year, remained in the district until 3rd grade. Our percentage of meets is at the same percentage and 1% higher in reading in that first year compared to our students who did not attend pre-K. You'll see that those numbers begin to divide out a little bit as they go up, but the performance is very close to their non-pre-K peers. Our second cohort took STAR this past spring, 2019. And so we really only have 2 STAR tests with our first cohort. This year, our second cohort will take 4th grade STAR, and our first cohort will take 5th grade STAR. Are there any questions at this point?
Good.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, one part. Sorry, I'm trying to use my computer and forget it. Section 6B, construction update. That's where we are, yes?
Yes, sir.
And just programming note, we'll take a brief break after this, guys.
Good evening, Board President McLaughlin, Trustees, Superintendent Cardona. We have our monthly construction update. First, a review of our budget. You can see we're continuing to progress with about $1 million in savings targeted as a cushion toward the end of our projects. We've been talking about closing out projects, and our goal was to bring you the Hernandez re-roof this month. However, the architect did not certify the final payment. He returned it to the construction company with some errors that need to be corrected. So we're looking to do that next month. On this sheet, we were asked to include an additional perspective on the completion date. There is the scheduled completion date, which is by contract, the number of days from the date it begins. Then there's the TCO date, when we have the opportunity to move in and take occupancy. And finally, there's the substantial completion date. You can see that's projected for the high school STEAM building, and that is from Weber. We think it's a bit optimistic, but we're happy to see them wanting to hit that target. For a 5-campus renovation, we are down to the roof lines that we've discussed. We're in negotiations and conversations with Cadence McShane right now to see if they want to come in this summer. They think it's about a 6-week job, and we're trying to target out how that would stage and what that would look like and what our options are in that process. At the high school, we were asked to give some broad general things that need to be completed, and so in the next 30 days, you can see the list. We have a punch list of just over or almost 900 items, and we've just started that. Our goal is to finish that in this next 30 days. and some images that are going on the campus, a lot of site work.
Mr. Barton, before you go further, on the uneven roof lines, I understood that we were not concerned about the structural integrity of the roof. So I'm curious why we would want another summer of construction at each of those campuses without concerns about the structural integrity of the roof.
Right now, it's about being drawn to spec, and that is not what the architects drew. That wasn't the expectation for the building, and so that is the conversation, is they didn't meet what was drawn. And that's why we're reviewing it. We haven't brought plans, and we'll bring plans to you if we were to phase something. But right now, the conversation is ongoing about the different options.
Okay, thanks. Sure, Don.
Thank you, Mr. McLaughlin. Similarly, if it isn't broke, why try and fix it, I guess, comes to mind. We've already had our fair share of experiences with Cadence McShane, and if it could have easily been built to match the first time around, I'm hesitant to afford them the opportunity to try and get it the second time around. Individually, if it wasn't built to spec and to the expectations of what was contractually in place, I think at that point it becomes a legal matter in regards to our outstanding balance of payment to them personally. But I do have concerns about unleashing them on our facilities another time, hoping that it ends positively or more positive than it did the first time around. So
Thank you for that, and there are a variety of options out there, but the latest legal update coming out of the last session was that you have to give the company a chance to resolve the issue before you can proceed to any type of legal remedy. And so that's, we're in that conversation right now, but there are a variety of options out there.
thank you, Mr. Barton.
Again, with the site work at the high school. And Miller Middle School, it's not that pretty yet. If you've been there, it is very much in the tear down phase. We are in phase 1, and they are excavating and demolishing furiously. We hit a water line just last week, and that was an adventure that everybody responded to admirably. It was a great response by the district and the city. And then our final project that's currently under contract is De Zavala. We actually just changed the routing this morning, and we did a lot of communication with our parents, and I have not heard any complaints yet, so that's real positive. And then finally, we hope to bring you Goodnight in April, and that'll be our summer project. It's very small, just under $3 million. Are there any questions? Thank you.
All right, let's take a 10-minute break and we'll come back at 7:13. We'll pick up where we were, which was moving into, as I catch up, 7, approval of consent agenda items. Ms. Hanson?
I move that we approve items A, B, C, and D.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Motion by Hanson, second by Arredondo. All in favor? That carries 6-0, so that included an election cancellation. So in accordance with the Texas Education Code, Chapter 2, Subchapter S, it is ordered that Margie Villapando, an unopposed candidate for the office of School Board Trustee, Single Member District 2, for the San Marcos Consolidated Independent School District, is hereby elected to that office. Consequently, no election for that position will be held.
Okay, Margie. Thank you.
All right, item 8, items for action A, consideration and approval of a plan of finance to issue San Marcos CISD District Unlimited Tax Refunding Bond Series 2 2020, authorizing district staff, bond counsel, and financial advisor to proceed with such financing.
Good evening. When we set our INS tax rate at the beginning of the year, we did it with the intention of a defeasance in the spring. It just so works out with the market that it is timely to do a defeasance and a refunding of some of our past debt. From Mr. Tiarina's office is Mr. Adrian Galvan to present that to us this evening.
Good evening, Board, Superintendent. My name is Adrian Galvan. I work with Tijerina Galvan and Lawrence. First of all, thank you for allowing us to be your financial advisors. Thank you for your trust. I'm here to talk about the refunding opportunity that's presented to the district that can be done in conjunction with the cash defeasance. At first, I wanted to just give you a recap of the refunding, the refinancing we did last November. So you approved parameters approval, and last November, we refunded $65.5 million of existing debt, and from that you saved on a net present value, today's dollars, $6.9 million, which is 10.6%. Usually you do a refunding when you're in the range of 3 to 5%, so something that's 10.6 is way above the usual threshold of where you'd consider refunding. On a future value savings, like what came off your books, so your accountant took off $9.1 million of debt off of your books on that financing, and I applaud you for being quick to move on that opportunity, and the assistance of your staff on helping us prepare the documents and the rating, the diligence calls. We can't do our work without great staff, and your staff has always been very supportive of us. So thank you. So that's a recap of the deal from last year. What we're looking at today, I'm going to click past the first slide here. Okay, so I'm going to focus mostly on this page here. And the summary box on the top left, it says with current market rates, you're able to refinance by taking out 2 bond issues. Actually, this is a corrected slide from your book. It's the Unlimited 13 is shown on your book, and I added the Series 2015 as well. So you've got a Series 2013 and a Series 2015 that currently can be refinanced, along with the cash defeasance that's been contemplated since last August. If you look at the quadrant at the bottom left, there's $23.6 million of existing bonds that we're looking at taking out, refinancing, and it's shaded in blue. By taking out that 23.6, the district could save 1.5 million on a net present value, which is 6.6%. I told you last year you got a 10.6. The interest rates on these bonds are fairly low, and that these have only been working for the last, I would say, 3 or 4 weeks. And this is all tying into what everyone's watching the news. We talked about coronavirus earlier. Anything that happens bad to the economy, the stock market, usually means good for borrowing, for municipal debt, for treasury rates. So the district has positioned themselves of taking advantage of lower interest rates, the flight to quality that's happening right now because of the fears in the economy. And that's what we're presenting today. If you look at the shaded column on that has the fiscal year, that's the savings pattern. That's the drop in your annual debt service that's going to happen if we get permission to move with the parameters and we're able to lock in these interest rates. And if you notice, the first column past the date, the fiscal year that's labeled prior debt service, totals to 30.7. Notice how that debt goes all the way out to 2035. The column just to the right of it is the replacement debt, and notice how that one stops at 2030. So the combination of the cash defeasance, the $3 million and change that's being kicked into the deal, and the ability to get savings, we're actually shortening the bonds that we're working with from 35 to 30, and that's a big. Everybody wants to pay off their debt early, and that we're able to use these bonds to do that is beneficial. Notice at the bottom of that quadrant, people always ask me, well, if I'm giving you $3 million, is that really my savings, or so that the issuer contribution for the defeasance is netted out of the net present value savings. So if you look at that column that says 5.2 million total, it's all the way second to the right, that's the net present value savings. But then we do a deduction at the bottom of the funds on hand. That's the money that the district is contributing as cash. So I subtract that off, and that's how we get to the 1.5 million of net present value savings. The next page, I'll go over real quick, but I wanted wanted to be able to show you what the cash defeasance is doing is the quadrant to the right, and that's shortening the debt. And then on the left is what the refunding is doing, what you're doing with the new bonds that are being put into place. And when you combine these two pages, it's the same. It's what I showed you on the page and on the front. The next page, bonds to be refunded, page 4. Look at the rates on the Series 2015. They're at a 3.16 to a 3.6. Those all are relatively low interest rates. Usually, I've been doing this for 25 years, running numbers. I look at this in 25 years, maybe once or twice, that you look at those bonds with those interest rates and you can generate savings out of them. We just happen to be in that market right now. And if you look at rate difference for the 2015, that's what's shaded. That shows you how much you're stepping down the interest rate. So you used to have a 3.16. Right now you can get a 1.05 in 26. The differential is at 2%. If you look at the 13 deal, there's no corresponding current rate, and the reason for that is that's because we're shortening the debt. So that's why there's not an interest rate there. This is a timetable. What I've shaded in blue are the action items at the district, the important dates. So today we're seeking parameters approval. Your bond counsel, Juan Aguilera, is here. He's going to present some documents that need to be executed to move forward. Between the shaded parameters meeting today and pricing that we're looking at April 28th, we'll be working with staff closely on getting information for documents, rating presentation, same thing we did back in the fall of last year. If we're able to move things, and I've already been assured that the district's going to do everything they need to, we'll try to move that pricing date from April 28th. We'll move it up. The beauty of parameters approval is we have the flexibility. As soon as we've done all the steps, we can jump into the market. Right now we're showing April 28th. Pricing, as soon as you price, you're locked in. The closing happens usually a month later, but once the pricing's done, you've secured the benefit that's the district would get from the financing. And again, our advice with the 6.6 savings on this deal that usually would not produce savings is for you to consider and to instruct us to move forward with parameters to get the savings to lock in that 1.5 million. That number is net of cost. All the costs are paid. The district still and then receives a 1.5 million. And the working group participants, so Juan Escamilla and Ponix, Bond Counsel, TGL, financial advisor, paying agent, underwriters counsel. We kept that the same as the team from the fall, just to keep things moving and just to be as ready as possible. They all did a good job, and we recommend that you go with that same team. And that's my presentation. I was told if I get under 15 minutes, I get a gold star. But thank you again for your trust, and I'm open for any questions. And just again, thank you.
What are the costs associated with the refinance?
The cost. So the working group participants. That's the working group. So there's a cost of issuance. There's underwriter's discount. So the cost of issuance is to pay your rating fees, your financial advisor, your bond attorney, printing of the official statement that gets pushed out. So those are the main cost of issuance items. And then you have an underwriter's discount component to the cost, and that's what's paid to the underwriters to market the bonds. And we make sure that the underwriters are charging. Our job is to make sure you get market rates, and all the expenses are the market expenses on the underwriting group. And everyone on the cost of issuance side has a contract with the fee schedule with the district, and all that. We do a full reconciliation with your finance department. But those are the two components of the cost. There's cost of issuance and underwriter's discount.
Would you know what those costs are?
I have to go and set all those up. I can get with your staff, and I can relay that for the next meeting. What I have to do is I have to poll everybody on the working group, and it's easy to do. Usually we do it a little closer to pricing, but I'll get that moving this week.
Do we pay those costs up front, or are they rolled into the issuance?
It's rolled into the issuance and the borrowing, so no money is exchanged from the district. We do the borrowing to fund an escrow to pay off the old bonds, so those bonds come off your books, and then to pay the cost of issuance, underwriter's discount. So you borrow to fund those three items: escrow, cost of issuance, underwriter's discount, and the comparison that what I showed you on the first page after the cover page, that's net of costs. So after you do cost, that cash flow savings is what happens after we do
So if you
that.
can give us a number that's net of cost, don't you have to know the costs?
No, I have estimates, sir. I have estimates. If you want me to give you the estimates, I can do that.
Is it based upon a percentage of
No.
what's being done, or
So,
are they flat numbers?
okay, so everybody on the cost of issuance side, the FA, bond counsel, paying agent, all have fee schedules, all have contracts, and it's calculated on the par amount usually of the financing, the size of the deal. Some of them charge you, like a paying agent will charge you $500 per year, first year up front. Printing for the document usually it's like $2,000 or $3,000. So we've got a spreadsheet that we populate. We poll everybody on the working group to get their fees. We've already reconciled the deal from 2019, but I can have that. If I start that tomorrow, I can have those close estimates in a couple of days.
Any questions? Okay.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Well, that's item A.
we're not
Right.
ready. Do we go ahead and move for
Yes.
action
Yeah.
item A? Okay, then I move that we approve a plan of finance to issue San Marcos Consolidated Independent School District Unlimited Tax Refunding Bonds, Series 2020, authorizing district staff, bond counsel, and financial advisor to proceed with such financing and approving of other matters incident and related thereto.
I'll second that motion.
Hanson and Mr. Villapando, we got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor? 6 carries. What remains?
The next item on the agenda is to work with our bond counsel to establish the parameters order.
Okay.
Thank you very much. My name is Juan Aguilera. I'm with the law firm of Escamilla and Ponick, and we represent the district as your bond attorneys. As Mr. Galvan was stating, back in November, you did exactly what you're contemplating or considering today, and that is to authorize a parameters order. You're not selling bonds today. You're not committing to sell any bonds, but what you're doing today, if you decide to move forward, is to adopt a parameters order, and the parameters are, number one, that you will issue bonds to refinance, and the par amount of the bonds not to be more than $23,620,000. And again, we work with Mr. Tijerina and Mr. Galvan in getting all these numbers together. That you would have a net effective per annum interest rate not to exceed 3.5%, and that you need to have a present value savings of at least a net present value savings of at least 4%. So those are your parameters. If you authorize and adopt this order, you're authorizing the board president and the superintendent of schools, just like you did last time, to then act on your behalf. If all the parameters are met, if they're able to, if the financial advisor is able to come in and bring you the savings, then you're authorizing those individuals to go ahead and sign a approval certificate, and at that time, the financing will be completed. So, again, same thing as we did last time, and if you choose to move forward, then adopting this parameters order, then you're setting the motion in place, and then, as Mr. Galvan was saying, April 28th or maybe a little bit earlier, depending on what happens, then an approval certificate will then be presented, and they will be in discussion with Mr. Barton, with the superintendent, discuss all the numbers, and if once they decide, they'll make a recommendation, and then the approval certificate is signed, and at that point, then the sale is consummated.
Questions? Thank you. So we need a second motion.
I move that we approve an order authorizing the issuance, sale, and delivery of San Marcos CISD unlimited tax refunding bonds in one or more series, levying a continuing direct annual ad valorem tax for the payment of the bonds, authorizing an authorized representative approve the amounts, interest rates, prices, and terms thereof, and certain other agreements, procedures, and provisions related thereto, and approving other matters incident and related thereto.
Motion and a second from Mr. Bando. Any further discussion? Nope. All in favor? Carries 6-0. Thank you. Takes us to 8C. Consider amendments to 2019-2020 budget, which are on page 108 in the board book.
Yes, sir. This evening we bring you 3 budget amendments.
10, sorry.
No, you're okay. Page 110. Amendment 2013 moves funding from security and services from an unfilled position into general administration to create a new position. Amendment 24.
On that one, what is a community specialist?
I believe we talked at the agenda prep last week about increasing our outreach to the community in public relations, and it will fill that capacity.
It's a PR position?
It's in communications.
It's in communications. Okay. Maybe. What happened to our security safety director?
We actually do have still a security and safety director. That position was budgeted last spring as a stipend and as a full salaried position. Mr. Wozniak is doing an excellent job as the director of transportation and overseeing safety and security at the same time. We had an unfilled position that could advantage the district as it was described in our agenda prep last week.
Ms. Castillo.
Is this position going to be a permanent position, or is this one is this what this person's going to be doing as far as the census is concerned?
That's like until June. Yes, they would help with the census. But it
And
is-
that's, I don't have a problem with that.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, is this going to
Yeah, it would be
stay,
under
or
Mr.
is it going to be a
Fernandez's.
permanent position, doing other things other than just the census? Or
Yeah, recruiting, marketing. You want to talk about it more?
Yeah, definitely. We talked about at agenda prep in previous board meetings is to try to increase enrollment in San Marcos CISD. So we would work on, bi-weekly promotional videos to highlight CTE programs. As a one-person department, I can't really work on those promotional videos while going to campuses, promoting all the great things that are going on in the district. So an additional staff member will allow us. The first project is to focus on census outreach, but second is to try to capture all the great things that are going on, but push it out even more to our community. Like I said, it starts with promotional videos. I want to do a promotional video on all the CTE programs. We also have different programs at the campus that I haven't been able to attend. For example, Boy Scouts at Mendez. I would love to do a minute and a half video on that program as well, just to highlight more, to capture all the great things happening in our district.
Mr. Fernandez, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Ms. Halsey.
I
I'll
just
go
wanted to say
next.
that I think that since Mr. Fernandez has come on board, he's done a terrific job at actually creating a real communications program that's multimodal and that really works to serve parents and students and the community at all levels. And I really appreciate that work. And I think I see him everywhere all of the time, but he can't be in all of the places. And I think having some support for that is absolutely warranted.
So thank you.
You used to have a assistant, right?
I have interns. Yes,
They're
sir.
just the one, people that take the pictures?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So they're limited to 15 hours a week, and then it's hard to find interns because they're working for about $12 an hour when they can go and get a full-time job while attending college.
Did you have any further question, Mr. Fernandez? I thought I saw your hand.
Yeah, I guess have a statement about this position as we have this conversation. So individually as a trustee, I've been very vocal about my concerns about our community, especially our ISD students and families being undercounted during the 2020 census. And so when this position was posted, I immediately thought, great, we're gonna have someone temporary for the census. It's gonna support our ongoing efforts. It's gonna relieve some of the burden from Dr. Valadez and Dr. Cunningham and Andrew, who we want everywhere at all times in all places and spaces. And then when I saw that it was full-time, it was a $60,000 commitment, I became frustrated and, we don't need this and our budget's already in the red, so on and so forth. But then I reflected on really where our communication as a district was when I was elected in 2015, and that was when the schools were closed and our community was flooding. KXAN was calling my personal cell phone, trying to find out what the ISD was doing, and parents were asking why things were happening and why weren't they getting information. And just to say that we've gone, I think, light years from where we were is a testament to the Department of One, to put it quite frankly. And again, I think that short term, this is going to have benefits to the ISD. Long term, as we have to become more competitive with ISD enrollment and communicating the great things that we're doing, I think this position is going to well serve the district.
Well, Mr. Fernandez knows how much I like him, the job he's done. But I'm uncomfortable moving money out of security to PR. Right? This may be a good idea as a standalone, but the source of funds concerns me because when we added the safety director, my understanding was that was going to be a position focused on security. We had a lot of security concerns at the time, and I appreciate that we've had transportation flexing into that position, but they have Mr. Wozniak has a position as well, and so when we motion this out, if we can separate the different amendments because of the source of funds, I'm opposed to this one.
Mr. Barton, as a follow-up question to that, is the board empowered at this time to, in its motion, redesignate where those funds are coming from?
Right now,
So instead of withdrawing them from security, could we pull them from the general fund instead?
the board always has that authority.
Okay.
If I can also mention that, hopefully Doug can have my back on this one as well. We know we're both departments of one, school safety department of one, communications department of one, and we lean on each other a lot. Anytime school safety is concerned, Doug and I are the first two to communicate with one another. So I could honestly say I'm the almost assistant safety director. I'm not as knowledgeable as Doug or anyone else, and Doug is kind of my assistant communications director. So we lean on one another a lot. If he needs a flyer done, he reaches out to me. We had an exposure drill the other night, and he said, Andrew, you don't have to be here. And I said, hey, I want to support you, and also learn about the different techniques. And so we support one another. So I know I'm not a safety director, but a lot of safety comes with communication, letting our parents know what's going on our campuses, what happened on our campuses. So I understand that I'm not immediately a security guy, but I feel communications is 95% of that battle.
Ms. Costilla.
Mr. Barton, will the added responsibility of safety director be adding more duties to what he already has?
No, ma'am, he retains what he's been doing all year, and we do a great job building leaders in our district, and our leadership team at Transportation has stepped up. We have associate directors at each of our transportation hubs, and I think we're doing a pretty good job this year without, there's always challenges in transportation, but without any major incidents.
But this is not something that's going to be a burdensome to him as far as safety thing is a big thing, and it should be a big thing. So I'm just asking in regards to whether this should come out of fund balance or whether it should just be a decrease or increase to one to the other one. I know that Andrew is saying that he's gonna be, he helps out, but I think from my perspective, I need to make sure that I'm making the right decision as to what money, since we do need it, and I think it'll be an asset for us to have it, whether this is, because I would not want to impose on him, not so much imposing on him as far as duties are concerned, making sure that we do have the safety issues covered at all times.
Yes, ma'am. The administrative recommendation is to repurpose the funds that we have budgeted.
Okay, thank you.
Chair Dunlop?
Thank you, Mr. McLaughlin. Mr. Barton, if you could educate me, when was the safety director position first posted, and how long has Mr. Wozniak been serving in that position?
It's just about a year now since we brought that position into the district. I believe we interviewed for that last spring. We started the stipend arrangement at that time to finish the year, and it just seemed to work with our leadership structure, and it matches the size of the district. We can't have executive positions for everything. Although we're a growing district, we're not quite as large to do that yet. And it has worked out. We have leaders who are able to get all their jobs done.
So as a follow-up to that, it's the administration's perspective that the role of managing ISD-wide security has been well served in the current arrangement.
I think we're going to find we're a leader in that. We're presenting at conferences, working closely with the Texas School Safety Center, and Mr. Wozniak is at the front of the pack. And our transportation hasn't suffered.
Ms. Vipando?
Mr. Cardona, in my opinion, I understand that the departments have worked this out between themselves, and do we need, or the administration, does the administration need to work that out as far as titles and who does what, who has what responsibilities, and I understand, you know, how they both have worked it out within themselves, but do we need to have any clarification on what the duties need to be and who's responsible for what?
No, if you step on safety with Doug, he like reminds you of who the director of safety is. He kind of has owned the transportation, and they go together. When there's an accident,
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, police, he's one of the first responders, and so it just is kind of filled in. Andrew just kind of melded in because we started realizing over the past year that communication is a big part of the safety, the transportation, like all of it kind of flows together. I think when I was originally talking to Trustee McLaughlin, I made a comment about the interns, but they're the ones that handle all the budget codes and all the individual pieces. And, you know, maybe if I told him something, that's my fault. I will say something sometimes and then they fix it and make it right. And so it really was more, we've been doing it for about a year, and it's just kind of been seamless with all the meetings that Doug goes to with Texas State School Safety Center. We kind of have become the forefront of them figuring the safety and the transportation and melding all that together. We're in more stuff than you, apparently we're in videos. I was in a video, I didn't even know I was in a video on safety at some conference in Corpus. They were like, hey, you're in a video. I said, I am? I said, oh, I did a video 3 years ago. And they just put it in. So he's just kind of assumed it, and we never filled it, and it just worked.
Well, as long as it works within the organization of the school district, and that's all.
So
I mean,
just
I
kind
think
of as a
if
reminder.
it's working now, it should just be spelled out.
And so just kind of also that goes, so right under Doug are his two supervisors. And so we had somebody leave within transportation, and we didn't hire that position. And so when we opened the east side annex and the west side, those supervisors have kind of become semi-Doug's in a way. So they kind of took his part so then he can oversee the safety piece and the transportation at the same time. So last year we did absorb a position and then just repurposed 2 positions and saved then also.
My concern isn't Mr. Wozniak. He's been able in a variety of spots. I recall when Reese was in kinder, he would like swam down and in a flood and unplugged the line, and water was able to release like Aquaman. So I don't have any doubt about his capacity. My concern is when positions creep and we fill them with talented folks that we already have, we don't bring outside expertise to a matter. So if we hired a security director from somewhere else with a background in security, they would bring new ideas that were formed outside the ISD and look at the way we do things and reform them. And so, you know, it's never about the person filling the role. It's more about, are we bringing in expertise from outside of our group? And that's my broader concern, but specifically as to this position.
I will say to that Texas State is the expert, the Texas State School Safety Center, and he has been tied to them. He's presented for them. He has been tied to them. So, I mean, the governor gave Texas State School Safety Center $20 million or whatever it is to hire all these people to go and do a job. Well, he's already been working with Kathy Martinez-Prather since all this started amping up. So he has first access. So I don't know that the notion of bringing somebody else in isn't necessarily a good thing, because Kathy's going to call him, or the people right under Kathy are going to call him to get our people to go to training. They've opened up spots for our principals to go to safety training because we are here. So, you know, Texas State School Safety Center is the preeminent group, and he's kind of fallen in line with them, all of our principals. Mr. Duval goes to a lot of trainings with them. All of our principals actually go to a lot of training. So if it's going to be like, if there's going to be an expert, he's going to have the same knowledge. He's not going to have the law. Maybe he's not a police officer. He wants to be, but that's a whole separate conversation. But I think he's got access to the most up-to-date processes. He brought, you know, somebody from the federal government in to train, I think it was federal government, but he also got transportation to be a site for, you know, getting our bus drivers through training. You know, we authorize bus drivers, and we've opened up to others. So, I mean, he's really kind of taken on this stuff, and he is the expert in this region for everything going on, because they've included him. Like everything, they always ask him to go.
Ms. Castillo.
Who was the person that filled the position after we approved it? For safety director? Did we have one? No?
Mr. Wozniak.
So we approved a position, but we never hired an actual body. Is that correct?
No,
We did?
He was the best person. He
Okay,
was the
so that's what I'm
candidate.
saying, is that we have one, but he's also over transportation. That's what we're saying too. So he has 2 titles, and he's been doing this for a while.
Yes, ma'am.
So basically, you're just saying we don't need the money for the other title that he has,
Yes, ma'am. We're repurposing.
because he's been doing this all the time to begin with.
We're repurposing the funds allocated to that position to another area where it's needed.
Ms. Halsey.
I understand what you're saying, and I appreciate the idea of having somebody come in from the outside that brings a different perspective to this position, especially when we're talking about the safety of kids, right? I think that's really important to think about. I also appreciate the work that Mr. Wozniak has done in a number of capacities, and I think you're right, that we have a special relationship with the Texas School Safety that really puts us in a wonderful position for the safety of our staff and students. I would be interested in the future of seeing another budget item that gave Mr. Wozniak a staff person that would work under him as an assistant director or an assistant and a specialist, something like that, specifically around school safety, and perhaps that person could be a person that came from someplace else that had some of those experiences. So.
Okay.
You want to vote on that one, or do you want to keep going?
I would prefer if someone wants to make a motion on 20.13. Ms. Hanson, go ahead.
I move that we approve Amendment 20-13 as presented by the administration.
I second them.
I have a motion by Hanson, second by Arredondo. All in favor? Okay, 5, and I'm opposed. 5-1. That carries. Okay, as to the other two, is there any further information, Mr. Barton?
Just that the Amendment 14 is from fund balance. It is a byproduct of the 8-period day at the high school and the increased participation in CTE. It is all for travel and competition for CTE students. Amendment 15 is just reorganizing the money. Ms. Presley now is in control, and she needs her money in different places, so we're putting them in different function codes.
Mr. Barton, I don't have specific issue with these two amendments, but I do have a general question about policy for extracurricular travel for high school students. Do we take classroom teachers to drive buses for activities in which they're not the lead?
If they have a CDL and it works, so most often that would look like a coach. So that would be the classic scenario you're describing. I've seen and heard of situations where a group is looking to travel a field trip, a one-time thing, and they say, we need a driver and we can save some money if someone on this campus drives. You get a sub, and that person with a CDL drives. So I don't want to tell you no, that does happen.
I'd like to free up money to allow extracurricular activities at the high school to be able to hire someone from transportation to drive so that we don't have a sub in an academic class. And whatever that cost, if you could bring that to us next month, I would be very interested.
The only caveat I would put to that is usually when a coach drives, they're coaching when they get to that destination. So, leaving them in the classroom, we may have someone else from transportation drive them there, but who would coach once the kids get?
Yes,
Yeah, I
so
understand.
that wasn't what I was talking
Okay.
about. I'm talking about if coach for one sport
Drives for
drives for another sport,
Got it.
And they're leaving their
has a
kids,
sub in their academic
Yeah.
class.
I'll look into that.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
I support that.
Academic, I
Yeah.
mean.
Yeah, I would
What I can
support
think of is where if a coach or somebody will drive, like for Abbott.
Okay.
Yeah, and they're being pulled, or teachers being pulled out, because I know that's happened before.
Okay,
That's what he wants to address.
for next month, sure. But as to these two, anybody?
Make a motion to approve Budget Amendment 20-14 and 20-15 as presented by the administration.
I'll second the motion.
Motion by Arredondo, second by Villalpando. All in favor? 6-0. Okay. That takes us back down to item 8D. Consider approval of Memorandum of Understanding, Interlocal Cooperation Agreement for Mobile Radio Services and Equipment between SMCISD and LCRA.
Make a motion that we approve as presented by staff.
I'll second.
All right, motion by Arredondo, second by Halsey. Any further discussion, questions? None? All in favor? 6-0. That takes us to 8E. Consider approval of contract with TDS for waste management district-wide.
We put this item out to bid, and we had one bid returned. It was from TDS, and that is here for your approval.
Were the rates in the bid different than what we currently pay?
Just slightly.
Lower? Oh, really?
Slightly.
Good.
That's surprising.
All right. Ms. Halsey?
I move that we accept the bid as presented by staff.
Second.
Okay, motion by Halsey, second by Arredondo.
I do have a question.
Yes. Go ahead.
I would like to get an update in a month or two on our recycling and composting programs at all of the campuses. I know that we do compost. I would like to know how much we're composting, what we're composting. Are we still using compostable trays? Just a general update on what that looks like at different campuses, because when I've been on different campuses, it looks different in different places to me.
Okay. Mr. Arredondo, you had a question as well?
No, just I wanted to make a statement as well. It's my understanding that TDS offers something called the Eco Academy that trains teachers and students to do different initiatives on campuses in regards to our TDS contract, and in some instances, some ISDs have actually reduced costs because they're diverting items from the landfill. So anything we can do
to make this utility bill less. Obviously, I'm open to having those conversations. And it's my understanding too that through TDS, students can actually sell the compost that is generated at their campuses as campus fundraisers. And all of that is for me checking out their website. So I'm assuming that that's offered through our contract that we're gonna possibly sign after tonight's vote. So obviously if we're paying for it or they're offering it, I want us to utilize it. So whenever Trustee Halsey's report comes back, hopefully you can include that information as well. Thanks.
Okay. Any further questions or discussion? Seeing none, we got a motion and a second to approve. All in favor? 6-0 takes us to item 8F. Consider approval of Bonham tuition rates on page 134 of the board book.
In March of 2015, the district approved a rate of $5,040 per student per year. In March 2016, we reduced the tuition price to $3,900 per student per year, and that was in response to local going rates for our other providers. And so this year, moving into 2021, we'd like to continue to provide tuition full day for $3,900 a year.
Ms. Halsey.
I move that we accept the tuition rate at $3,900 as proposed by staff.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further questions or discussion? All in favor? 6-0.
Move that we adjourn.
Second.
Motion to adjourn, second by Hanson, second by Arredondo. All in favor? That's 6. All right, we're done.